Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to What's the Point? And this week, I've got another terrific guest. It's just been a great guest after great guest. Today's guest is Mindy McCubbin, who is the founder and owner of Truman Wealth Advisors. Hello, Mindy.
Hello, Bill. Thank you so much for having me on What's the Point today.
Well, I'm glad that you are able to make the time, and I'm glad that you're a guest. And here's what's also important. I'm really glad that the people listening are here to hear what you have to say, because I know the amount of value that you bring, which is why I'm so excited to have you as a guest. So let me just start a little bit by saying that as the owner of Truman Wealth Advisors, one of your statements is that you do your best work with busy professionals who need to delegate an essential aspect of their lives to someone they trust. Unpack that for us, because there's a lot in that sentence.
Yeah. So I'll tell you just a little bit about who likes to come to me. I'm a financial advisor and investment advisor. And, a lot of my clients are really busy. They're in their 40s, they're in their 50s, they're in their peak earning years. Mm-hmm. And they know that their life is getting complicated, right? So if you think about wealth and complexity, when you don't have a lot of money, your life is complex, right? And you're kind of trying to answer this question, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? Yeah. You kind of hit this inflection point, or a lot of really busy professional people hit an inflection point where they quit answering the question, am I going to be okay? And they start to ask the question, what am I missing? What do I need to be doing differently? Who can I trust? How can someone help me navigate, especially the financial services industry, which can be quite complicated. Yeah. So what I love and why I founded my firm was I found that I had friends that, were a lot of Gen Xers, a lot of people in their 50s that were and 40s that were coming to me and saying, hey, I'm a busy doctor. I'm a busy executive. I have kids. I'm running around with my hair on fire. And I really need somebody to help me figure out what are the things maybe that I'm missing. And so I'm particularly passionate about helping, whether that's a single female that is looking for a partner, a thought partner to help navigate some of that complexity, or whether it's a couple that, they both work maybe in different industries. Maybe he's an engineer or she's a, dermatologist, and they're trying to figure out, hey, we know that we need to be doing something to secure our future and to make sure that we're never going to run out of money. But we're not quite sure, where we should be from a net worth standpoint. We're not quite sure how we should structure these investments. Mm-hmm. And so I love when those kind of people come to me and say, please help. And that's what we do. That's what we do.
Well, that's great. And we'll come back and get into that a little bit more in a minute. But another reason that I'm so excited to have you as a guest is that a lot of my listeners are following a similar professional journey as you are, or at least are thinking about it. And so let's go back a little bit. After graduating from Truman State, and then at some point you got your MBA from St. Louis University, which is impressive. But you spent many years working in the financial business for a little company here in St. Louis called Boeing. Mm-hmm. And from there, you moved on to Shelter Insurance. Mm-hmm. So you've had quite a bit of experience in the corporate world, which I share, and we have a similar path in that regards. But talk a little bit to us, please, Mindy, about your experience, both good and challenging, I'll say, in the corporate world. And you can get as specific or not as specific as you care.
Well, as you mentioned, I started out in corporate finance within Boeing, which I loved. It was a challenge. It was very dynamic. I learned so much from so many great leaders at Boeing. I was really lucky in that I got to see all different kinds of aspects of corporate finance, whether that was selling F-18s, which I did for a while, or whether that was estimating the cost of missiles, or whether that was doing projections for the earnings that we would roll up for Wall Street, which is where I spent the most time. So, so I learned so much. I think the biggest takeaway that I had from my 10 years that I worked at Boeing was I just got a great front row seat to what great leadership looks like in a Fortune 500 company. And so I was enormously grateful to get that experience. I also learned a lot about the complexities of being an employee in a Fortune 500 company, and what does it mean to have options, and what are your different benefit plans, and how does that all integrate? And so so I learned a lot just being an employee about the different aspects of personal finance as well while I was there. But my transition was, as anybody will tell you, sometimes your life goes in a direction you could never foresee, right?
Often.
Often it does. And so, I was happy as a clam at Boeing. I was, a young manager. I had people working for me. I thought I would be there for my career. But I was married at the time, and my husband is a golf pro. He works at several clubs within the St. Louis area, but he's from the Columbia area. And there was a new course that was built, and he had the opportunity to come be the head pro and to come home. So to come closer to family. And I thought, wow, no way, this will last 2 years. I gave him an ultimatum, Bill. I said, 2 years is that, we'll go there for 2 years. That'd be it.
Let me interrupt you just for a quick second for the sake of those listening. When Mindy talks about them moving to Columbia, Columbia is a lovely college town, pretty much in the center of the state of Missouri. So it's probably a 90-minute drive from St. Louis, but it could be argued that it's a much longer journey culturally from city to country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what a great point, Bill, is that, I'm more of a city girl, love the city. And I, had a difficult time imagining that I could really be more of a country girl. And so we moved here, but I for your listeners who maybe have a transition in their life or have something where they come to a point and they think, I have a decision to make and I can go in one direction or another. It felt very strange and unusual for me to say, because I've always been a hard charging woman and, independent. It felt very strange for me to say, I'm going to acquiesce to my partner's career. But I found that has been, one of the things that has helped us succeed over 20 years of marriage is that, every once in a while, one partner steps forward and another steps back. And so this was my time to maybe reevaluate what it was that I wanted to do. And if that maybe looked different than what I was doing at the time, which was corporate finance. And so, I always was fascinated and loved the investment side of finance. And I, at Boeing helped the team that would roll up numbers and do the earnings reports and, talk to Wall Street, but in a very specific sector at one specific company. So it was very narrow from a standpoint of the experience that I was getting within just a single company. And there was an opportunity at a company called Shelter Insurance that happens to be headquartered in Columbia, Missouri.
That I didn't know.
We're
all learning as we go.
So they're a super regional insurance company, meaning they're mostly throughout the Midwest. Is where they if your listeners are throughout the country. and haven't heard of it, it's mostly because it's through Tornado Alley is where they write their insurance. But it was a great opportunity for me to work in the investment management side of a company. And there's different, kind of places that you can land if you really like the finance world and financial services. And this was one that was always fascinating and interesting to me. And it was, I just being open to the opportunity of moving actually opened up this opportunity that was fantastic. So I was on what's called buy-side institutional investing. So what I did was I managed the insurance company's money. And,
Nice.
Just say it in English, I managed their stock portfolio for their insurance company, for the retirement plan, for the 401k, for the foundation. So I got a really great, broad experience of different kinds of portfolios to manage, which was just fantastic. So then I'll kind of take you to the present day. Is I did that for 13 years and just loved it. And thought, oh, wow, I'm going to be doing this forever. I think I have a problem, Bill, into where I consistently think I'm going to do my existing job forever.
Let me just say something here, if I may, excuse me, but that is something that I think a lot of us fall into a trap with. And that is the type of point that is so salient that I want all of the listeners to hear that, because in my case, so you spent 10 years with Boeing and 13 years with Shelter. So 23 years where you were pretty comfortable. I spent about that amount of time with my loan employer thinking that's where I would stay forever. And that can be an absolute misguided, uncomfortable trap if we get so locked into that. So what I want the listeners to understand, both from your journey and mine, which are a little bit different, yet it's kind of parallel, making that change is scary. Mm-hmm. Taking that step can be frightening, but it can also turn out opening doors and creating opportunities that you've never thought you would experience. So when people are listening and they're in that mindset of what should I do and it's scary, don't just jump out there, but do it with some planning, do it with some discussion with what I'll call trusted advisors. And sometimes we just have to take that leap. So thank you for making that point, and anything you'd like to add on that would be great. But the other thing I want to point out before we get to present day, mm-hmm. I'd like to get your insights, Mindy, because my impression of Boeing, based on many friends that I have, it's headquartered, it's not headquartered in St. Louis, but Boeing is a major factor in St. Louis. It was formerly McDonnell Douglas. So nonetheless, I've got a lot of friends that were there, and I actually have a lot of friends that are in the insurance business, and for that matter, in the financial advisor business. It strikes me, as the author of the book Women Who Won, that all three of those industries have a pretty strong male influence, if not male dominance. Did you find that? And if so, what kind of impact did that have?
Very true. Aerospace engineering, definitely. Yeah. There is a male presence and dominance, and also the big piece that is located or headquartered in St. Louis for the Boeing company is the defense unit. Mm-hmm. And again, that's much more just from a historical perspective and just what the armed services is. You're dealing with a lot of customers that are male as well. And so very much a hierarchy, type environment, very much very dominated by men. One of the things I think that was really great for me at Boeing specifically was I had worked directly for the CFO of the defense unit, who was an advocate for women, who not only was very supportive of me in my career, but was what I would call a sponsor of me in my career. And so, when I said that I had learned a lot about leadership within that company, it was because I was lucky enough to find some of the really good leaders within the company that could see the future and knew that they, needed to be supportive of women in particular. I think my formative experience there in that regard was that I was pregnant when I was working for him, and he was nothing but supportive. And it was a guy named Randy Simons was his name, and was, I was trembling in my shoes when I went to go tell him that I was pregnant at the time that I was working for him in what was a very demanding, high stress job. And again, he had children of his own and was incredibly supportive and did everything he could to be supportive of me in having a child while I was working in that kind of position. And so I was lucky. Not everyone is as lucky. And I did have experiences too with people who I would say were the opposite of that. And I can give you just one or two examples of, I had an engineer one time when I was pregnant that looked at me and, and I was a little worn down and I was, trying to finish a proposal and, just kind of just saying, oh man, I'm tired. This is really tough. Yeah. And he looked at me and he said, well, you applied for that job to be a mom, so you shouldn't complain. And that just took me aback, like, whoa, wow. Okay. And then, there was other experiences that really kind of, you knew that there were some people out there that just did not have that same perspective. But I think what really made the impression on me was the leaders that were there that really were forward thinking and really said, hey, we know that women are providing a great diverse perspective and we need to support them in ways that, that they can be successful. So it is a balance. It's not, if things aren't still not perfect. When I worked at Shelter, they had never had a female CEO in the history of the company. And had very few that were in executive management. And then Shelter, one of probably the biggest impressions and the biggest supporters of me personally while I was at the company was actually a woman that was on our board. So I would give board presentations and she was an advocate and very supportive of me. When I would give presentations and ask great questions and then always follow up with me to say, you did a great job. And so again, like women supporting other women, I'm very passionate about that as well, because I had many women in the financial services industry that have kind of reached back to me and said, hey, how can I help you understand how to be successful? So.
That's great to hear, because I have heard, and again, this is out of my realm of experience, but I have heard that it's not uncommon, certainly in the corporate world, and at least in my experience in the corporate world, so this may be somewhat limited, that the women helping women isn't always the case, that sometimes that might be more of a situation that is perceived to be competitive rather than supportive. Is there anything to that?
In my experience, it hasn't been the case, mostly because I think, my peer set, a lot of my peer set within financial services was male. And I was open to that. I could have mentors and sponsors that would be male or female. And then I was also a huge advocate for anyone that was, junior to me or my peer that may have been a female. And so I think you kind of attract whatever you give out. And so I didn't really find that there was too many women that saw it as a competitive situation. Okay. But again, there were limited few of us, right? So the limited few of us, we just kind of said, hey, we've got to have a deal here because there's so few of us that we're going to try and be as supportive as possible.
Okay. Well, that's really good to hear. And I'm glad to hear that. And I hope that's the case more often than not. So now I had stopped you earlier because you're on a nice progression through your career and you were getting into, and now today, and I said, stop. Well, let's go back to now today. Yeah. So it's been probably early 2020, I think you wrote your first blog. And your blog was titled Why I Started a Female-Run Financial Planning Firm. So share with us why you started your own female-run financial planning firm.
Well, I worked at Shelter with a lot of firms on Wall Street. So I worked with Goldman and JP Morgan and had a lot of fabulous experiences in terms of, really understanding the market and having great mentors that helped me to understand investing better. But one thing that was glaringly obvious, and this is Bill, my experience was I would go to a conference that was an investment management conference, and there would be the line out the door for the men's restroom was 20 feet deep, and I was the only one in the women's restroom. It was like it was the opposite of what you see at a Cardinals baseball game, right?
Yeah. Or any sporting event or any typical group. Yeah, that's funny.
Right. And so I thought, oh, this is, and then also just the tone and the approach to a lot of the investment management world and the things that I was seeing, it was very masculine, right? Which is fine. I actually thrive in that environment, and I have grown up in that environment on the corporate side. That if you're in a male-dominated industry, competition, metrics, all of that, I love the aspects of that might be kind of seen as masculine, right? Portfolio performance, strategy, all of that. The piece that was missing a lot of times were more of what I would call, and Sarah Blakely, who is from Spanx, talks about this a lot as a CEO, is that, there's some softer elements, especially to financial planning and personal financial planning that get missed. And it's not always about money. It's about what are the questions that you need to ask behind what's about, that are being expressed through money. And so that fascinated me. And the more that I dug into it and the more that I understood about not just the investment management theories that were smart and good to practice as a portfolio manager, but also the fact that even in the institutional world and even in the world where you're measured on performance, people make huge behavioral mistakes. And they make behavioral mistakes because they don't have great communication with their board and so it was fascinating to me to see that in these male dominated conferences and, portfolio discussions that there was a real role for women, and that role should at a minimum be equal. Because in the world that I was in, it was less than 10% of women were managing portfolios. And in the financial advisor community, it's less than, 25%.
Okay.
And so, I kept thinking to myself, how can I change it? What can I do that would be something that would help me grow personally and professionally, that takes me in a direction that I've always wanted to go, which is more entrepreneurial, that changes things in the industry, that really puts women more in not in the passenger seat, but in the driver's seat of investment management and financial planning. And so I looked around at the industry and I said, I think there's this gap for, a woman advisor that has this kind of experience, this strong experience within investment management, to start her own firm. I also found that there was a lot of people that were coming to me that were just like what we described at the beginning, that said, hey, you seem like you know something about this, and you're approachable, and you have a good communication style, and I like the way you talk about investments that is a little simpler or more straightforward than what I've heard maybe from someone else. And so that's why I launched my firm.
And I'm so impressed by what it's taken, both in your experience, but also in your character, to make that move. And speaking of character, I think in my experience with you, it's your character and your values that help set you apart from many other advisors I know, mainly male, but also female, because you start with the concept, and you touched on this just a second ago about people putting it in more simple language, but you are focused on helping people not just compound their money, but compound their knowledge of money and their knowledge of where their money goes. And I think that's really important, because and I had this analogy pop in my head when you were talking about having them in the driver's seat. We can be in the driver's seat and have no clue where we're going, or we can be in the driver's seat, or we can have someone driving us and we're going wherever they're taking us, or we can be in the driver's seat with someone who's a guide who's been in this area before and lets us take the lead and say, if you go left here, this might happen. If you go right here. So I think that's fabulous. But the other thing is, and you have so many quotes that I love, that you help exceptional people navigate big risks and big opportunities. And all of your work is based on your values, part of which is to help recognize your clients' values and what's important to them. Mm-hmm. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot in my writing and then with my clients about what are the outcomes that we're trying to deliver for them. And you're right. I'm just a guide in a journey for them. And they're the ones at the end of the day that are going to have to tell me where they want to go. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, what I found is that what people really are looking for, and there's really three things that whenever I talk to people and what they're looking for from a standpoint of outcomes is that number one, they want more freedom. They want more freedom in their life to kind of create the life that they want to live, that they maybe always wanted to live, or that they didn't even know that they wanted. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first thing that we talk about is, what does that look like for you? We can't talk about whether or not you should invest more in a 401k or put it in a Roth or put it in a tax box until we know what that means for you and where you're trying to go. Are you trying to leave a job? Are you trying to create a company for yourself? Are you wanting to sell your business? And what does that look like? So that's the first one that my clients are looking for, is outcomes for themselves. And so that's what I'm focused on, is what their outcome is. The second thing that they're looking for is more peace, like more peace of mind. A lot of times people come to me and they have 7 accounts at 5 different institutions, and so like what you were saying is that you can't really take advantage of an opportunity if you don't even know where everything is, or it's not organized, and you don't know if you can afford something. You don't know if you should jump on an opportunity because things are just kind of everywhere, right? And so and then a lot of the reason why people have a little bit of a mess when they come to me is that they just don't know who to trust either. It's that they've kind of maybe done it themselves, or that they've trusted somebody and gotten burned. And, because we have a lot of people who call themselves financial advisors in the, financial services world, but they're not selling advice, they're selling products. And so, they may be mixed up in a product or something that's not right for them. So that's kind of the second outcome is that let's build a relationship to where, you have a trusted advisor that I'm going to be trying to help you figure out what are those decisions that are going to get you to be able to take advantage of opportunities or navigate risks, and do that in a way that you feel good about, right? That helps you sleep at night, all that kind of stuff. And then the last thing that I'm particularly passionate about, because I've helped a couple of clients with this, and it's just so transformative to see when someone really gets this, is that the last outcome that clients look for is more meaning. So richer meaning in their lives. What is the money for? Why am I working this hard? And once they hit that inflection point that I talked about, where it's not anymore about, am I going to be okay? Because a lot of the clients that come to me, they've already kind of figured out that they're going to be okay. Now it's, a question of, well, what is my legacy? What is the thing that I want to leave now, either to my kids, or how do I want to, really think about my role in the world? And, and for some of my clients, that's been, they've established donor advised funds that, give money to charities over time, over their lifetime, that, their kids will participate in, that just shows their values to their family, so things like that are very meaningful. The other meaningful thing is that maybe somebody wants to step away from what they're doing and be more philanthropic with their time. And they want to know that they have the time freedom to be able to do that, to create that meaning for themselves. And so they can't do that if they don't feel good financially, if they don't know what their situation is. And so that's one of the things that I try and uncover with my clients is how can we get those three outcomes? And then what I do is I say, that's how you get to true wealth, is that true wealth is really when those three things are firing on all cylinders, and you feel good about, and I feel great about delivering those kind of outcomes to clients.
So my guest today is Mindy McCubbin, the owner and founder of Truman Wealth Advisors. And as I paraphrase the 3 points you just made, let me step back. What you just talked about encapsulates what, as a Gogiver coach and speaker, the Gogiver Philosophy is all about. And that is delivering more in value than you take in payment. And the three things you talked about, which I'm going to boil down to one word each, correct me if you don't like it: vision, freedom, and legacy. Vision, where are you going? Where do you want to go? And how can you get there? Freedom of worry. I mean, the value of having peace of mind to sleep at night, that you're comfortable with the person that has one of your most important things in life in their hands is hard to really discount. But legacy, what are you going to do with it? And so those are three things that frankly have nothing to do on the surface with, I'm going to make a lot of money for you.
Right. People come to me with that, Bill, though. They come in the door with, how am I going to retire? I want more money, right? Like that. Those are the things that bring someone in the door, because that's the question that they're asking. But then, what I try and do is then go through a process. What I'm passionate about then is that those outcomes, that all sounds like great, corporate speak, right? Somebody was sitting there and go, oh, she was, in corporate America for 20 years, look at great corporate speak. But I actually go through a very specific process for life planning, financial planning, and investment strategy to help, so I have very specific things I do. I have accelerators what I call accelerators that I use. And whether those are surveys, whether those are, very specific policy statements for how you're going to invest your money and why, I'm also passionate, not just about delivering those outcomes, but the process to deliver those outcomes is just as key. So,
well, again, I like to boil things down. Your question when someone comes to you very simply could be, what's the point? That's why I named the podcast, because that question is so meaningful, and it's true. I want to make more money. Great. Why? What's the point? What are you trying to achieve? And that is what separates you from so many others that are quick to say, oh, great. Well, I have this product that will get you this amount of money. And they start to bring to the table things that are primarily, first and foremost, good for the person who's in the financial advisor seat. And they may feel it's best for that person across the table or on the other end of the phone, whatever the case is, but they don't really know, because they haven't taken the time to learn what that person's vision and interpretation of freedom and need for legacy are. So those are all terrific. So we're recording this on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So later today, I look forward to going to LinkedIn and getting Mindy's Money Mindset Monday, which is really informative. They are short video clips with just a ton of value to them. When did that start? And tell me a little bit more. Share with all of us the Money Mindset Monday.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, right? Mindy's Money Mindset Monday. But yeah, I started that at the beginning of this year, a little bit as a challenge to myself and also as a result of the conversations I was having with clients. Is that, the more that you dig in and ask those questions, why and what's the point,
Mm-hmm.
like what we were just talking about, the more you find that it's not about money, it's about something else. And money is just an expression of, something that's in someone's life. Discipline, for example, when you think about money, how do you express that with money? Well, savings. People who are very good savings, that's just discipline expressed financially.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's ways that things in your life are being expressed financially. So impatience, that's, when you splurge on something or spending, that's just that emotion expressed financially. And I find myself doing it. I know that I do it myself. And so I try on those little video clips just in a minute to try and help, people that are maybe out there that don't recognize or don't really see the connection, to try and make some of those connections for how things in their life that they are doing may be being expressed financially. And how can you change your mindset around that? How can you start thinking differently about your money? And, not just listening to, one of the things that as I'm sort of passionate about this is that, the money management business will tell people, don't spend $4 on a latte, don't do that. That's ridiculous. Don't spend money on avocado toast, those are $3 and $4 decisions. And people feel really bad. They'll come to me and they'll be like, oh, I feel like I'm spending too much money. When we pull it back, when we zoom out, that's not the problem. The problem isn't that you're doing these $3 decisions. The problem is that you're making $30,000 or $40,000 decisions or not making them and not even realizing it. So, the problem is that you haven't looked at your investment portfolio for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
Because of inertia, right? And now you feel bad about spending money on a latte. So, there's things I think and messages, especially that the media will put out there, that I try to unpack a little bit and say, wait a minute, let's just think a little bit differently about this. And let's try and think through ways that you can change your mindset about something and really, change your life or change your perspective.
So following up on that, because I think that's so true. And it's so easy for anyone to say spending $4 on a latte is a bad choice. Yet it's not necessarily, unless you go through everything we've just talked about. So another one of your minutes. So one thing that is really impressive about you, Mindy, is the amount of content that you create and deliver, and the meaningfulness of it, the nuggets that are in there. So one of your recent ones, and it follows up on what you just talked about, 3 key traits of the successful investor mindset. What are those 3 traits?
Oh, man. I had to pick 3. There's so many. One of the things that investors that I know that are super successful, and again, I had great experience with seeing really good investors when I was at Shelter. So Shelter, again, like I feel like I learned all the secrets of money management from some of the best in the business when I was at Shelter. And I think, and I know we don't have a ton of time, so let me talk about one that I think is so critical.
Okay.
And that is really like playing the long game. So, it's very easy to get caught up in what's happening in the market day to day and the noise that is happening in the market day to day. And there, there's ways to make money. Of course, I always acknowledge this with my clients, and so many people have been, this is hugely topical right now because of things like cryptocurrency and because of things like what happened with GameStop. Is that, there gets to be this FOMO of, oh my gosh, what am I missing out? Again, what am I missing? Should I be in this stuff? And boy, I could have made $1 million. And, how did I miss this opportunity? But really, it's not about that, right? Like if you pull it back and zoom out again, the thing that most successful investors really understand is that time in the markets is what counts. It's having that diversified portfolio is what really counts, is having that long-term perspective. It's knowing what game that you're playing too. Don't play someone else's game. If your game is that, hey, I want to retire when I'm 50, it does not matter what's happening in the cryptocurrency market, right? What's going to drive that way more is your own behavior. And that, oh, by the way, is the thing that you can control. And so, so again, like if I zoom out and I think about what those really good investors that I learned from over years had in common is that they had that longer term perspective. They understood compound interest. They understood that you have to, kind of ignore some of that noise that can be there. I think that's especially relevant right now with, some of the things that you hear in the media and in the news that's happening in financial markets. And so I try and focus on that with my clients. That's the thing that I'm so passionate about is that what the right benchmark is for you is not the S&P 500. It's your life. You need to decide what your life is going to look like. And that's the right benchmark to be measured against. So.
Well, that's great. And thank you for sharing. And it ties in so directly with my work in branding and in particular, personal branding. We have to know ourselves. We have to understand our own value and have to really guard against having someone else evaluate us, whether our value is worthy or not. And that's a challenge. And so it's not just in our own personal branding, it's in finance and everything else that we do. So I know that you are a runner and you enjoy running. Yeah. And this may just be a quick follow-up to what you had just pointed out, but another one of your articles is titled "Investing is a Marathon, Not a Sprint." Yeah. And I think you may have just touched on that, but I just love the title and how you take that personal life enthusiasm and are able to make that. I love analogies, as you know, to use that as a platform to build. So I think you just touched on that. And again, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I also know that you are very much enamored with, in love with, and thrilled and satisfied by your family life. We talked about your husband and your first child, Riley. So as they were questioning whether a pregnant woman should work in the business or not, you were pregnant with a woman, with a girl who's growing into a woman. Now you have a son, Tyler, and you love family. And recently, for full transparency, Mindy and I are also partners in a mastermind group that meets once a week when we have time. So that's why I know a little bit about this, but I do know that recently you were able to finally get out and have a bit of a family vacation, and that included surfing.
Yes. Yeah.
Those eyes light up. If you guys are on YouTube, you should see how her face just lit up. So I'll just throw this out there real quickly. Again, you had to pick a number, but 5 lessons from surfing was kind of a general topic. How do you talk to me, first of all, about the personal experience of surfing and how that gets your eyes to sparkle and that face to light up the way it just did. And then again, you turn that into a great lesson for financial investing.
Well, you're never too old to start something. This is the first lesson that I take from both running and surfing. So I didn't start running until I was 39. I didn't start surfing until I was 45, and love them both. It just exhilarating. Had no idea how much I was going to love both of those activities. And so first of all, my first lesson would be it's never too late to start anything, including getting engaged with your money. And so I tell people that all the time is that, I waited until I was in basically my 40s to kind of figure out how to do a few things that I'm absolutely passionate about, which is surfing and running. And so that's never too late, first of all. And so surfing, one thing that was, so right before the pandemic, I went to a week-long retreat where it was women that, this first time surfing, we were all novices, all just trying to get up on the board. And I just found there were so many parallels to investing. One of the big keys with surfing is that you really got to kind of stay calm. You've got to look for the right wave, right? Like I had a surfing instructor that was she was just this Costa Rican, fabulous, just spunky woman that was just amazing surfer. And she would describe it like a, boyfriend or a husband. You've got to wait for the right one. You've got to kind of be very patient. That you've got to know that it's not going to be perfect. That that popping up on the board again is an imperfective art that you just have to master over time. And so you have to be patient with yourself. That you've got to look up at the horizon. Like I always love that because that's very true with investing too. Is that if you look too much down at your feet, you're paying attention to the noise, and that you've got to look at the horizon to really, know where you're going. And so I feel that that's so true with people's money is that they need to, look up at the horizon and figure out where it is they want to be before, they decide that they're going to catch the wave. And so there's just so many great parallels that I found when it came to surfing. And sometimes you're going to wipe out. That was another one that, sometimes, and I had that experience. I've had investments that have not turned out well. And especially in the institutional world, when you're talking millions of dollars, that there's risks that you're taking. And, that can happen when if you jump off the board wrong, if the board hits your head, you can have epic wipeouts. But the important thing is to get back up and to keep going. And so there has been so many great lessons. Surfing is just not only is it put you in a Zen mood, right? I love it. It puts me in such a great mood, and being in the ocean is fabulous. But it also has taught me so much when it comes to how I should be approaching just my personal financial life, and then also how I should approach things with clients.
Well, that's a great lesson for all of us to go through our life experiences and say, what can I learn from this, and how can it apply to my life in general? So it's great to hear you do that. Just a quick sidebar. Was your first surfing experience in Costa Rica? Or
yeah.
Was it just-
Yeah. So I learned, I actually, and that's one of the lessons that I wrote about on my blog, is one of the things that you really need to do. And I was enormously grateful for this. Is that I had expert help. I had experts kind of helping me the whole way to figure out how to get up on the board. And it was invaluable. It saved me years. I did it in a week where I did this intensive surfing experience. That's how I approach it with my clients actually too, Bill, is that at the beginning of our relationship, we do a lot of work and we, really build the foundation. And, if you are a good surfer, you have a good foundational, piece that you can always go back to, that how to pop up on the board. And it's because you were taught the proper techniques. You were taught the right way to do it. I think I always talk about that with my clients is that that's what we're trying to do when we build your investment strategy. I'm going to teach you the right techniques. I'm going to teach you the appropriate diversification. I'm going to help you figure out what are those base elements that are foundational. That then when we catch the wave, you're going to ride even further, and it's just nothing's going to be able to stop you because you've got that foundation. So,
and what that's going to do, listeners, is if you work with Mindy or someone with Mindy's approach, is you're going to be working with a very highly successful professional that's going to build the foundation for you. And at some point, you're going to get in that Zen-like spirit of when you realize how successful your financial investments have been, and that you're on your path to where you wanted to go, and you're in a position to start talking about legacy. And speaking of legacy, I've just got a couple more things for you. So bear with me, and thanks again for your time. You are very involved in philanthropic work, the United Way and Truman State, your alma mater, and other areas. Is there something you want to talk about or share with us, or educate us or enlighten us about in that world?
Yeah. So I have kind of done some things out there where I've tried to figure out where's my place? Where can I give back to the community of both my, my time, my talent, my treasure, all the three key elements of giving back into the community. And so I've done some, fantastic things with nonprofits and with Truman State, and being on their foundation board. I was the head of their investment committee. And so that was a great experience and kind of paved the way for several other women to be, on the investment committee for Truman State. And, but where I've really been passionate is in educating, whether that's students or whether that's women in particular, about, how to succeed in the investment management world, how to be successful investors. So during the pandemic and right before the shutdown, we were headed in a direction in my community where we were trying to have just a broader network of women who were accredited investors that could invest in startup companies. And so we started a non-for-profit called Como Women's Investment Network for Entrepreneurs. And it was a way for the entrepreneurs in our community. So we're in a college town, so there's a lot of stuff that comes out of the university to really support women founders in a way that was bigger than what was happening within our geography right now. And so, so I had the experience of getting training as an angel investor and a startup investor when I was in the institutional management role. I had gone to New York and was part of a group called 37 Angels that, their mission was really, how do we get more money and more mentorship and more networks to women founders? Because if it was bad within the investment management community where there's less than 10% women that are investment managers, it's even worse within the startup community where especially on startups that have very high growth potential, so whether that's in healthcare or whether that's in technology, women founders were getting funded at a much lower rate. And by much lower rate, I mean that, maybe 3% of funding was going to
that's just...
and again, so, how are we going to solve these problems unless we're willing to step up and say, hey, number one, this is a problem. And two, how can we be part of the solution as women? And so that was what I was really passionate. I found that I was really passionate about that as a woman who had started my own company. And, as one that had talked to many, many, many women founders that struggled to find financing. And they struggled to find financing. They struggled to find mentors. They would walk into rooms where it was dominated by men. And, and I have had all of those experiences and said, let's just find a way that maybe we can educate women about not only what does that look like for an entrepreneur and how can an entrepreneur be successful, but also how can women start investing some of their own capital. If they're passionate about that and if they want to be part of the solution. We have several entrepreneurs within my community that have been successful, and I'm trying to educate them on how do you then do that same thing and come back. There's nothing that is more important from a legacy standpoint of if you are a female founder and you've been super successful, you can reach that hand back as well. And you can help other women that are trying to do the same thing. In particular, because many, many times the women entrepreneurs we find are trying to solve problems for women. So it's, again, there's so many great synergies there that I'm very passionate about, and that I thought, this is really something that our community needs, and that we can make a difference, even if it's a small difference, in helping women to be successful.
Well, this week's guest on the podcast talks about it's the small things done consistently that can change the world. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if it's a small thing and you're doing it consistently and you're spreading that, maybe we're going to get more close to a level playing field. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I hear you saying is it's not that women should receive anything extraordinary or over and above, but let's level the playing field, because there's a lot of talent and there's a lot of value, and there's a lot of great ideas that are just not being embraced and not even being given a chance to get embraced.
Yeah, I'll give you a specific example, Bill. A great example. We had a young vet student here at the university that designed a collar that could tell when a cow was going to have a baby. And so she had this company, Calving Technologies, and fabulous, scalable technology, solving real problems. Mm-hmm. And again, she saw this problem because she grew up on a farm. And she, again, was struggling to get funding, didn't maybe have the right mentors. She was in the vet school. How can we surround her with the right kind of people that can help see how maybe she could scale this technology, how, this is a real problem that's getting mm-hmm. solved, that she saw it because she's a farmer's daughter, right? And again, the farmers around her weren't necessarily thinking about those problems. They were using their old techniques, and mm-hmm. she kind of came at it at a completely different perspective because she had a lot of empathy for the cows. She had cows that would die in childbirth. Yeah. And so again, that, having women at the table and bringing their perspective and bringing their ideas to solve real problems, I'm particularly passionate about that.
And going back to something we talked about earlier, your shift from the city to the country, and when you were making that move, I'm sure you didn't think that you'd ever run into someone that was coming up with an invention to tell when a cow was ready to give birth.
You know what? That just goes to show you, Bill, is that you can make the most of your situation no matter where you are. You could be in the middle of flyover country in Missouri, and there's opportunities abound. And so it's all in perspective.
Well, just one more quick point on that young lady's approach, because it may have been driven more by empathy towards the situation of the animal, but it was also driven by financial considerations. So if that type of empathy, might be missed by the male gender. Mm-hmm. That type of empathy might be missed by someone of either gender who's always done it this way. So I think that's just another great example of why we need more diverse perspective, and that includes the whole female gender. So one last thing for you, and mm-hmm. that is very simply surfer, mother, wife, angel investor, founder and owner of a company that is female run in a male dominant business. Put all that together, Mindy, and share with us, what's the point?
What's the point? Oh, what a good question.
I had to know that was coming.
Yes. For me, really, I found just in my transitions and in the pandemic and in the time that I've had with my family and in the experiences that I've had with my friends and support network, I've really found that purpose, that if you do something for profit, you're going to make money. That's great. I understand that. That's part of a motivating factor. But for me, what I found, especially at this point in my life, is that I want to be intentional and do things with purpose. And so for me, whether that's being intentional with my family And knowing that even though I'm a small business owner, that I do need to take time and to be there for my kids and be there for my family. And so that means, having to hire a virtual assistant, having to, do things maybe different because of that. Whether that's being involved in the organizations that I'm involved in, like the Como Wine or the Women's Investment Network, is because, the purpose is really to help women become more equal. I'm sure we would clearly dominate the world if we wanted to, but really it's more about equality for me. And then purpose with my clients is really helping them figure out what's the point. And so, so there's different aspects to all of it, but at the end of the day, it comes down to me for just really finding a true purpose. So we have limited time here on this earth, and I'm still working towards, discovering what my purpose might be. But for right now, family and community and, being passionate about opening doors, especially for women, is where I am.
That's terrific. And our purpose continues to evolve, all of us, and that helps when we fuel it with our passion. So thank you for that. So Mindy McCubbin, if you want to get in touch with her, you can find her on LinkedIn. You can go to trumanwealthadvisors.com. All of her contact information will be in the show notes. Mindy, you've been fabulous. I knew you'd be a great guest, and you exceeded my expectations. So thank you for everything you've shared. Thank you for your time, and thank you for just the terrific advice.
Thanks so much, Bill. And I really enjoyed the time with you and having a conversation with you. So thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.